Hope you're all doing well. It's lovely weather outside today, so I won't keep you too long. But I just wanted to thank you again for joining us. I'm joined by Alex and Neil today, and Alex will be taking you through the demonstration from a technical side of things because he's far better at doing these things than I am. I'm here to talk to you about what Qlik has to offer and how we can help you as account managers here at Ometis. So I'll be taking you through the Qlik DataTransfer landscape and talking to you about the various different data sources that it can work with as well. We'll also be discussing that Qlik DataTransfer is a secure way of pushing data into the cloud. And the benefit of this, just for context, is to actually increase cloud adoption because more and more businesses are offering a cloud option as part of their general tool provision as well. So the purpose of today is just to talk to you about how it might be easier using Qlik DataTransfer to start getting your data into the cloud and just making it easier for customers and businesses to think about cloud options as they're going through their buyer's journey as well. As always, if you have any questions during the course of the webinar, please do pop them in the chat box and Neil will be hosting the Q&A session after the demonstration. So you can see me. My hair is a lot longer than it was in this picture, but just to put faces to names because everything is a lot more virtual these days. There's a picture of Neil who's hosting the Q&A, as I mentioned a few moments ago, and also Alex as well. And our email addresses are all there for you if you need to get in touch with us after the webinar. So we'll just go straight into my side of the webinar this afternoon. Like I said this morning, earlier, a few minutes ago, Qlik DataTransfer allows customers to, with their on-prem data sources, to easily move that data set into the cloud. This tool is recommended for customers who are already Qlik Sense SaaS customers or for those who are currently considering moving to SaaS and into the cloud. There are a number of different ways that as a Qlik Sense customer, you can move on into the cloud. We've covered it a couple of times in various other webinars. However, if you were unable to make those, please do get in touch with your Ometis account manager and we can take that discussion offline for you as well. Qlik DataTransfer is a lightweight utility and is actually provided by Qlik free of charge. And that's quite amazing in this day and age because there's a lot of different things that people generally have to purchase. So if you are considering the cloud option, this is definitely something you can take advantage of and we can help you as well at Ometis. It's a Windows-based tool and should be installed on-prem too. Its capability, like I said earlier, is to address the use case to make all data available in the cloud. So you can retrieve your on-prem data sources that are not directly accessible to the Qlik Sense tenant itself. The movement can be carried out either manually, it can be scheduled to when you need it to, or it can actually be triggered by a file change in its folder as well. So it can be quite simple and you do have a number of different options that are available to you to make that data accessible. The Qlik DataTransfer actually handles the movement of on-prem data by uploading your full data set, so you don't need to be worried about missing any data that might be not accessible directly, as I mentioned. However, you do have the option to set up your incremental data loads as well. And I'm sure Alex will do a much better job of actually explaining how that works during the demonstration, because I said he's definitely like the technical whiz kid of our organization as well. I hope you don't mind me calling you a whiz kid, Alex, but it's definitely more your sort of forte than it is mine. And also the data can be made available in any of the Qlik cloud spaces that you do have available to you as well. So that's it from me from a sort of high level perspective as to what Qlik DataTransfer is, but it's actually really useful for us to show you how it works. So I'll pass over to Alex now, who will actually go through a demonstration of everything that I've talked about a few moments ago and go into a little bit more detail from a tech side, how it all works. So yeah, just pass over to you now, Alex. Let me know when you're ready to share your screen. Thank you.
Afternoon, everybody. Yes, it's been a while since I've been called a kid, I have to say, but I'll happily take that one as being the whiz kid on the call. Yes, yeah, welcome. Thanks for joining us. So I'm going to give you a quick run through of using Qlik DataTransfer as Charan's given the introduction there, it's a tool for pushing data from your on-prem environment to the Qlik SaaS environment as well. So hopefully you can all see my screens now. Someone will no doubt scream at me if not. So when you first run Qlik DataTransfer, you need to hook it up and connect it to your cloud environment. So the first thing it's going to ask you to do, this is the Qlik DataTransfer screen you see here, is to create or put in an API key. This is how it securely communicates with your environment. Give it the URL. This is using our demo environment, and an API key. And that's pretty simple to get. You go into your cloud environment, which my connection has typically decided to time out on me. I'll just log back in a second. And under your username in the cloud environment, you have a section called API keys. As long as you're a developer in that environment and API keys have been turned on, you can do that. You can see I've got a few here for different purposes, including my Qlik DataTransfer one I set up the other day. I could generate a new one if I wanted and set an expiry date. So typically with this kind of Qlik DataTransfer, you're going to choose one of the longer durations. I've already done that, so you'd take that API key. It's a long string, a bit like your signed license key if you've seen them. It's like an encrypted authentication token that you put in here, and you would click confirm to confirm that. Then you're presented with this screen. So this is your Qlik DataTransfer window with these 5 sections in it that we're going to work with all of those sections through the demo today. For any of you that have read some of the blogs I've done in the past or have sat on demo sessions with me before, you'll know that I like analysing my solar power generation data. We're all probably a bit fed up of sales demo data, so I like to use something a little bit different, and it fills that need for analysing something that's meaningful to me. So I have solar panels on my house. I download the data. So I've mocked up a scenario here that works with the different data sources that are relevant to that. So the first thing I'm going to do is to load some data from a database. So the database where my readings of how much solar power I've generated are located. So to do that, I'm going to use this data connections area, and each item that appears in here, we're just going to have the one today, but each one of those is essentially one query to that database, which is going to create a QVD that is then going to get uploaded to our SaaS environment. But before I do that, I just want to show you, nothing hidden up my sleeves. If I come back into the hub here, and I go to my solar space here, you can see at the moment I have no, I'm wrong, I forgot to clear out the data. Let me do that quickly. It's always good to do a live demo. So here's some I prepared earlier, which I'm going to delete. So I'm going to clear out this space to make sure that I've got a clean area with no data in it and no apps. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly do that. Now I've got no data and no apps in there. And this is where I'm going to push all my data to and create an app in here to analyze it with. Okay, so I'm going to create a data connection. This is going to be my readings data connection. I wanted to go to Qlik Cloud. There are some limited use cases where you might want something to go to a local folder instead. It can be used for that, but the predominant use case is going to Qlik Cloud. I'm going to select my solar space. You can see this is populated using that API key, the spaces that exist in my environment. If I'd already connected to a SQL server, it would show up in a list here. I haven't. I'm just going to show you how to do that. Very simple. Similar list of connectivity here that you're used to in Qlik Sense Enterprise or SaaS or Qlik Sense Desktop. So you're probably used to some of these dialog boxes. We'll just wait for that to load. I've got a VM running a SQL server here with a database set up like that. And I will just connect to that. Okay, obviously it can use Windows authentication. If you're logged in as that, it's running as a service in the back end. You can control that user at the time of install or change it afterwards. This starts to look very familiar to any of you that have loaded data into Qlik Sense before. Select your database, your owner, have a preview, metadata. You can do all the usual filtering. As you can see, this is pretty much the same data load interface that you're used to from elsewhere. And you can see that we've got a fairly simple set of data in here with just some amounts of money, amount generated, and the carbon saving of that generation. So I'm just going to load my readings table at the moment. This next screen, I'm not going to tick anything in here at the moment, but this allows us to trigger reloads in any apps that exist in our environment, in the SaaS environment, that is. So once we've created an app, later we will be triggering an automatic reload. But in this case, we're going to leave that blank and just push the data up. Okay, so once I've finished that, I've now got my data connection called readings here. We've got the code there that generates it. It's going to the solar space, and we've got no dependent apps, and that's never run. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to upload that. So what this will do is it will go and it will query the database that we've got running. It will get the table of data out called readings. It will create a QVD of that, and it will upload that into our SaaS environment. So if we just wait a moment, that's succeeded. And if I go to my SaaS environment now, I now have a QVD that's appeared there as well. Okay, as you can see, updated a few seconds ago, uploaded by me. And I can start building an app. So apologies now if we end up teaching some of you to suck eggs, as it were, but I'm going to build a very quick app just to demo the data we're using here. Okay, so I'm going to create an app called Solar. You'll note that we've now got the QVDs appearing in this space here. You used to have to go to that other view that I went into in the tools menu and data sources to see the QVDs, but one of the recent enhancements is that the QVDs appear in the space itself. And that has been alongside some of the data cataloging functionality that Qlik have brought in recently. So I'm going to just quickly go in and tweak a couple of things in the data load process there. I'm now purely in the SaaS environment. What I'm doing now is not really to do with data transfer. It's just what we can do in Data Manager, whether we're on-prem or whether we're in the cloud. But this is how I'm going to build my app. So I'm just going to edit this app just to make sure that my timestamp is set up correctly and we get dates coming out as you'd expect. But you can see here we've loaded the best part of a couple of 100,000 rows of data into the app already, and we're going to add some more as we go through. So very quickly, just get that to format it correctly as a timestamp for us, and then I'm going to create one field in here that I know we're going to need later on. So very quickly, we can just add that field. That number formatting seems to have gone through. Okay. Anybody spot my mistake there? No. Now the number field's gone through, okay. And we're going to add a calculated field, which is just going to be date, and this is going to be date of the timestamp, because we're going to be linking some other data in based just on the date, not on that. And yes, you may notice it's American date format. At the moment in SaaS, all the apps you create default to the American format. So we'll put up with that for today, but obviously there are ways to tweak that if you want to. Okay, so we've created a new field, formatted a field, the rest are just coming through as numbers, which is how we want them to be. So we're going to load that data in. Okay, and we're just going to build a very simple sheet with that now. So we've got our new sheet here, which is going to be our dashboard. Always like naming sheets, so they make sense. So we're going to really quickly pop in a few KPIs in here just to start analyzing our data, and we're going to do here we go. We're going to do just a count of timestamps. So that's the number of readings we got, as we could see in that previous screen, 177,000. I'm just going to call this the number of readings. So we've got an idea of that. We're going to pop in our another KPI, which is going to be the latest reading, because I'm going to show you how we do the how we bring in some additional readings. Now, if we wanted to, obviously, as I tend to like doing, I'm going to set the date format on that, just so it makes sense to me. And this is our latest reading. So you can see the latest reading was up to the middle of March in this year. As it stands, we're going to bring in some fresher data than that shortly. And then finally, just what would probably be a more normal metric would be, well, how much power have we generated? And I'm going to tweak this one slightly again, just to make it a nicer label. So this is going to be generation in watt hours. So you can see that I've generated just over 16 up to this point in March, 16 megawatt hours of data. of power. And then finally, let's just pop in a line chart again. This is just going to illustrate when our data comes in, what it's like. So I'm going to use the timestamp date, and I'm going to use the generation again in here. So we should see now a nice line chart that shows our mostly seasonality of power generation over time. Okay, simple app. I'm not teaching to build apps today, so I'll move on from there. Okay, so what I want to show you now is that we can update this data. So I'm going to run a little command elsewhere just to update the data in the database, add a few more rows in to update it up until a couple of days ago. Okay, so I've run that script, and now what I'm going to do is come back into our data connection here. I could just click upload, and that would upload the QVD. But because I wanted to trigger a reload in the app as well, I want to set up my dependent apps. So I'm going to edit this and come in and say, I want you to update the app that is in the solar space called solar. Always remember to click that right arrow. That's something that catches me out quite often. Make sure it shows the dependent app here. And this time I'm actually going to split my screen. So we should be able to see this live. And if I come over here and ask this to upload the data in here, we should see that after a few seconds, it does that. Now this is loading the entire data set here and pushing the QVD up. I mean, it's only a couple of 100,000 rows. It's not a lot of data, but you can have more complex processes to do incremental loads, as Sharon said, and we'll have a quick look at how some of those might work shortly. And yes, I am just padding for time whilst I hope my app is going to reload. We can get a bit more information around that and click on last load details, and it will tell me in here that reload was successful. It uploaded this QVD and it triggered that app. And now you can see on the left-hand side here that my reading data is now updated up until earlier this week. My generation's gone up a little bit, and the number of readings is now 180,000 instead of 177. So you can start to see how you can build sort of this end-to-end task chain of loading data on-prem, uploading to the cloud, and then triggering reloads in the cloud. So I want to just show the other types of data we can load in, other data sources we can load in. That's the data connections from a database, vast numbers of connections you can use there. Next one I'm going to look at is the data folders. So this is where we can load in, Qlik DataTransfer will monitor the contents of a folder, and if it finds any new files or any changed files, it will upload those files. Okay, so what I've got in here on my local machine is I've got a folder called upload, which is currently empty. Okay, so I'm going to take that and I'm going to ask Qlik DataTransfer, please monitor that folder, the upload folder, and anything you find in there, upload it to my solar space. And again, I can set up my triggering for my apps here. So I can say, well, anytime any data changes in the upload folder, I want you to reload the solar app for me. Nothing in there at the moment as yet. So I'm going to grab a source file that I've prepared earlier, which is about, here we go, the weather. Okay, so we're going to load this weather file in because, of course, the question we might be asking is, well, does the weather affect solar generation? So this has some cloud cover and some temperature data in it. So if I click on that in there fairly quickly, if I just click off the data folder and back on again, you'll see that now says status is updated. If I go to the last load details, you can see that it's found that CSV file and it's uploaded it to the and refreshed the solar app. Okay, so if I come back into let me just make this all full screen again. And I come back into our data manager and I go to add that data in. Within my data files area now, remember last time I created it from the hub, I don't want a new app this time, I want to merge the data together. I'm going to come into the data files solar area. We've now got this weather CSV file. And you'll see in here, we've got dates, again, dating back to when I started with the solar power and some very basic weather details. I'm going to quickly add that in. So, you'll notice there that I've worked with, one of them was a QVD, that was created by the database connection. This is a CSV file that's supported as well, and Excel files and other data files are supported as well, just to it will synchronize those. They don't have to be in a Qlik native format, although obviously that's optimized for working with Qlik. So I'm going to join these two together on the date field so that we can line things up. So I want my weather date and I want my reading date. That's why I created that field earlier, so these two will line up. And it's going to call that date, so that's great. And then let's just load that data in. Okay, and back to our sheet. And now I'm just going to create a combo chart. So there's a slightly different bit of analysis here. I'm going to use my my date in there. And then I'm going to add my generation in again. So if I'm keeping with good practice, what I'll do is I'll come in here, I'll if I can get the punctuation right, I'll add this as a master item so that I know that I'm reusing the same measures. So then I can add that in here. And it's done that as a bar, so I'm going to switch that to a line again. So again, we've got pretty much the same as up on the above, but now we're going to also add in a line for the cloud cover percentage. I'm going to use the average of the cloud cover percentage. There is just one reading for each day, and I'm going to make sure that goes on the secondary axis. A bit hard to see like that, so we might need to reduce the granularity of this, but we can drill into it shortly. But I'm actually also just going to quickly flip that round to be 1 minus to say cloud cover percentage. Okay, sorry, cloud cover, clear sky percentage, because we'd expect our generation to be higher on days when that is clearer. So let me just tweak the granularity of that so that we can see it a bit more clearly if we do it at a month level rather than at an individual day level. Okay, so you can start to see, yeah, fairly clearly we've got a bit of a pattern there that follows the clear sky, but there's plenty of times when that doesn't follow that pattern as well. So let's look at another data source. Another thing that obviously affects this is the sunrise and sunset. The weather affects it, of course, but how much daylight there is probably going to determine that even more. Now I've got that data, but it's in a slightly awkward format to work with. So I've created a sunrise and sunset app. Now I've done this in Qlik Sense Desktop. That's worth noting that any apps you work with in this way have to be created in Qlik Sense Desktop. You can't use apps that are created by Qlik Sense Enterprise in this way, at least not directly. So the data that I got for this needed cross-tabling, it needed some fields mapping in, some recalculations. So I created an app that does that. And the app doesn't spit out any QVDs or anything like that. It just holds a table in memory. You can see I've got some things in here and some processing and so on that's doing some. It's feeling a bit sluggish today, Qlik Sense Desktop. It does some kind of, picks out the right data, does some mapping and so on, and then holds that in memory as a data table. So I've got that app, and what I'd like Qlik DataTransfer to do for me is to upload the data that is in that app. Okay, not the data that's saved out by that app, that is also a possibility, but it is clever enough to load the data in the app, see what tables are left in memory at the end of the process, and upload those as QVDs. So I'm going to come into my Qlik Apps area of Qlik DataTransfer, and we're going to call this Sunrise Set. Sorry, stickler for doing things right. There we go. And we want it uploaded to the solar space. We're going to come in here and select the file we want to upload. So if I come, in fact, there we are, it's already set up. So Sunrise Set. So I'm getting that from my Qlik Sense Apps folder. And again, let's tell it to update the solar app once more. Okay, again, we get this view here. That's never reloaded. So I'm going to click to reload that again. We're going to end up with another QVD created by this process. What this is doing is it is reloading that app in the background. So it needs access to the data source, of course. And then when it finishes successfully, it'll upload the resulting tables at the end there. And that's succeeded. So if we come back in here, and once again, we'll go to the data manager, we'll add some data. Just going to load this last file in. So please, as I'm going through, do think of questions and pop them in the question and answers area just whilst I finish building my very basic app here. As you can see, we've got date, sunrise, sunset times, but the daylight percentage is the thing we're most interested in this context. That's been pre-calculated in that Qlik Sense app for us. Obviously, we could choose to synchronize the data file up or source that data from some online source directly in SaaS if we wanted. But the scenario we're working with here is our data is on-prem and we want to get that up to SaaS. So if I just pop that in, I'm going to associate that again on the dates because these all line up on the date field. And the bubbles all join up together nicely. We're going to load that through. And we'll just quickly pop this on there so you can see I really did manage to load the data in, and then we'll get back to Qlik DataTransfer and cover the last couple of bits before we open it up for Q&A. So I can now, so we've got that clear sky percentage. We're going to do the daylight percentage in here as well. Again, we'll use the average over there. And as you can see, that follows the typical kind of sine wave that we'd expect. So as you can start to see that obviously, understandably, the percentage of daylight affects the solar power generation, the clear sky percentage does as well. There's plenty of other things we could go into here if we were spending more time in the app, predicting out into the future of what generation would be, looking at temperature, looking at all sorts of different things. But the illustration today is to show that I've now managed to upload data from a database table in here. Uploaded data that we've made in a Qlik app, a Qlik Sense desktop app. We've uploaded a file that was sitting in a monitored file folder. This connection details in here is actually just the database server, basically, so I can reuse that connection later if I want. The final piece really is just to look at scheduling the uploads. The data folder one, it will monitor that folder as long as the service is running. It will monitor it for changes. But the other types for the Qlik apps and the data connections, you need to schedule those because it doesn't spot those changes. So if I just do this as let's mock up a daily one. We're going to say update the readings. Possibly don't need to upload the sunrise and sunset times every day because they're pretty well known out into the future. And we schedule that. Okay, so you can see that you would now, assuming the data in the database updated, this would automatically update at 1 AM every day, and it would automatically reload the app. The reload trigger comes from these targets, not from the schedule itself. So if you're looking to where to put that, you put it within the Qlik app or the data folder or the data connection. Okay, so what we've done here is upload a set of data from 3 different data sources, really, a database, a file, and then a Qlik app, all into the SaaS environment, built an app off that. And as you can see, it's pretty quick, pretty streamlined, pretty simple once you got it up and running. Yeah, I'd just like to open up for question and answers. I think Neil's going to chair that. So if you've got any burning questions, I'll leave this up on screen in case I can answer any of them whilst we do that.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. We have got a few actually. So Phil's asked the first one. What are the technical requirements for the software?
So it runs on a Windows environment. That can be Windows Server or a Windows 10 environment. I'm running it on Windows 10 here because that enables me to run Qlik Sense Desktop on the same server, on the same environment. Qlik Sense Desktop won't run in a server environment, so if you want them running on the same place, you'd need some kind of Windows 10 in place to run it. It is running the Qlik Sense engine, so any reloads of apps it does or any data reloads will have similar requirements. So if you're loading, 100 million rows of data and doing some transforms on that in your Qlik app, it needs the correct spec for that. But the minimum requirements are very similar to Qlik Sense Desktop. A few gig of RAM and a bit of disk space. It's quite lightweight unless you're doing a lot of large data loads.
No, fair enough. Okay, thank you. Darren obviously joined us a bit late and wants to know how much it costs. So I'll cover that one, Darren. We don't normally like using the F word, but it is actually free. So yeah, that's a nice one to answer. What else have we got? Oh yeah, Kishan saying what limitations are there within the software?
So,
is it size of data or
in
anything?
terms of so in terms of size of files and things like that, there are some limitations. There were initially, it was like a 500 megabyte file limit, but they've fairly recently raised that to 6 gigabytes, which is plenty. You probably don't want to be uploading any files bigger than that. And if you are, we'd recommend breaking them down into smaller chunks anyway, well below the kind of gigabyte level, just for speed of upload and efficiency of the process. There are some other limitations, like, there's a maximum, I think, of 200 tables being uploaded from a Qlik app, but if you've got a Qlik app with 200 tables, then you might have other problems. And the same with files, though. That is one to watch out on. If you've got a file directory with more than 200 files in it, it will cap that at the latest 200. And I think I mentioned already about the Qlik Sense Desktop. It will only work with QVFs that are generated by Qlik Sense Desktop, and yeah, that's probably enough. There are a few other corner cases, but that covers most of them.
No, fair enough. Another one I can answer, I think. So Sarah's put, how do we get a cloud environment for Qlik? Well, Sarah, it depends on when you bought the software itself. So for some of you, it will actually be free. And in fact, you're one of them. So I think we need to, myself, Sharon and Andy need to get back on individual cases, unfortunately, because it does depend on the timing of when you bought Qlik Sense. But yeah, in your case, it's free, so we can sort that, and our support team can set up the tenant for you. One last one, where have we got here? Oh, sorry, yeah, Richard's asking, so is it only for SaaS users? Are there any other use cases where it could be used?
No, it is really, well, I think you can use it in other contexts, but in general, it is all about bridging that gap between on-prem data and getting your data into the cloud. That's the big need that they saw in increasing cloud adoption, really, and there's a gap there. It's the biggest challenge, the biggest hurdle. We've got all this data sitting on-prem. We don't want to replicate the entirety of it to the cloud. We just want to do the stuff that's relevant for our analytics and reporting, and this is a way you can do that. You can, as you may have noticed, if you've got this data connection, when you set that up, you can say that if you want it saved to a local folder, so you could theoretically use it to create a set of QVDs from a set of folders, a set of database connections. But why you'd do that, I guess you could use that alongside Qlik Sense Desktop or something like that. But yeah, no, really, it's pretty much exclusively targeted at. Yeah.
And so one other question has just come in. So another Alex, has asked, is this a route that you would use for a hybrid environment? I suggest it's probably one of them, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's one of them. It's hybrid in the sense that, yeah, you're running some things on-prem and some things in the cloud. It's heavily weighted towards the cloud environment. Generally, you're doing your extracts on-prem using this, some fairly simple ones, as simple as you can make it, and then you're doing any heavy lifting of transformations or modeling and all your end user stuff in the cloud. So this is very kind of leaning towards SaaS. There's a kind of a more balanced hybrid deployment you can do, where you actually have Qlik Sense Enterprise on Windows installed internally and the SaaS environment, and you might balance that a bit differently. And in that scenario, you can set things up to synchronize apps rather than data across, so you can kind of use that for load balancing. So there's a couple of hybrid options there, and obviously there's also private cloud hybrid options and all those kind of things as well, but broadly those are the two main ones.
Okay, no more questions, I don't think, unless anybody else has got any. No, I don't think so. All right, well, back to you, Sharon.
Thank you. I think everyone can still see my screen.
No,
No,
okay.
they can't. Okay, That's no problem at all. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. I do hope you have found it very useful. We will be hosting another webinar in May. I'll finalize the details of that and send it out to you. But if you do have any feedback for us or have any specific topics that you would like us to cover, do let us know and we can make sure we're putting out the right content for you. And we'll let you carry on with the rest of your day. So thank you very much. Take care. Bye.
Thank you very
Thanks
much.
all.